You ever notice how some people only remember your name when there's a check attached to it? Picture a high school gym, packed wall to wall. Parents filming, teachers smiling, everybody acting like it's a feel-good ending. And then, two kids grab the mic and do the unthinkable. They thank their real dad and toss the stepdad aside like he's an old charger they don't need anymore. The wild part? He doesn't snap. He doesn't argue. He smiles. That's when you lean in, because a calm smile in a moment like that isn't forgiveness. It's calculation. Stay with me, because by tomorrow, a college fund vanishes, and the woman who let this happen learns what public disrespect costs in private. They gave me my name on a tiny slip of paper, like it was a seating assignment at a wedding. Daniel Hart, it said, black ink on cheap cardstock. And I remember thinking how funny it was that 10 years of my life got reduced to something you could misplace in a pocket. The gym smelled like floor polish and warm plastic chairs. Parents fanned themselves with programs. Someone's grandmother was crying, like this graduation cured cancer. I stood in the back row because that's what I've always done. Be close enough to hold the whole thing up, far enough away not to be in the pictures. Marissa was 3 rows up, with her hands folded tight in her lap, the way she does when she wants to look calm but isn't. Tyler and Olivia were lined up with the other kids, gowns wrinkled, mortarboards crooked, smiling that bright 18-year-old smile, like the world hasn't billed them yet. I watched them and felt that old, stupid pride rise anyway. I met them when they were 8. Tyler had a gap between his front teeth and a habit of lying about homework. Olivia carried around a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing and would flinch if you raised your voice. Their real dad was a roomer with a first name and a string of excuses. I didn't step in because I wanted applause. I stepped in because somebody had to. I coached Tyler's Little League team, even though I didn't know the rules beyond don't let the kid eat dirt. I sat through Olivia's dance recitals with my knees jammed into folding chairs that felt designed by an enemy. I worked overtime, picked up weekend shifts, fixed the leaky sink myself, and told myself it was fine that my own hobbies disappeared one by one like socks in a dryer. Somewhere in those 10 years, I became the guy they came to when the car wouldn't start, when braces needed paying, when a laptop randomly died the day before a paper was due. I was the guy who kept the lights on. I thought that meant something. Turns out, it meant I was useful. The speeches dragged. A valedictorian talked about the journey, like we'd crossed the Oregon Trail. People clapped on cue. Then they announced Tyler and Olivia together, because twins are adorable in a manufactured sort of way. Tyler stepped up first, tall, clean haircut, the watch I bought him flashing when he adjusted the mic. He scanned the crowd, found his mom, waved like he was running for office. Then his eyes flicked to me for half a second. Not a warm look, not even a neutral one. More like checking if the dog was still on the leash. He smiled past me. "We want to thank the man who gave us life," he said, voice smooth, confident. "Our real dad." And right there, front row, center aisle, sat a man I'd only ever seen in pictures and in the occasional awkward drop-by. Mike. Tan. Teeth too white. One of those guys who shows up when it's convenient and disappears when it's expensive. He lifted his chin like he'd earned the moment. Tyler didn't stop. Not the loser who just paid the bills. It wasn't said like a mistake. It wasn't nervous. It was practiced, like he'd rehearsed it in the mirror and enjoyed the way it sounded. A few kids laughed. Not a full roar, just enough to make it real. That little ripple of laughter is what did it. Laughter means agreement. Laughter means you've successfully turned somebody into an object. Olivia leaned into the mic next. Sweet voice, big, innocent eyes. "We wouldn't be here without our dad," she said, and pointed again at Mike like she was unveiling a statue. "And, yeah, thanks to Daniel too, I guess, for, helping." Helping. Like I held a door open. I looked at Marissa. She didn't look up. Her eyes were fixed on her lap like she could stare a hole through her dress and disappear. I didn't see surprise on her face. I saw dread. Dread is what you wear when you already knew. The applause that followed sounded far away, like it was happening in another building. People clapped because clapping is what you do when you're told. Mike stood and waved like he just won an award. My throat went tight. Not with tears, more like my body was trying to swallow a brick. I didn't move. I didn't storm the stage. I didn't grab the mic and give some dramatic speech about sacrifice and fatherhood. That's for guys who still think words matter to people like this. I smiled. Not a happy smile. Not a "we'll talk later" smile. A thin, controlled smile that said, I'd just been handed a receipt, and I was going to check every line item. Because the second Tyler said, "loser who just paid the bills," something in my head went clean and quiet. Like a switch flipped. Like the last 10 years stopped being a story about love and started being a ledger. And in that frozen moment, while everybody cheered and my wife stared at her lap, I finally understood what I actually was in that family. I wasn't their dad. I was their funding source. So I stood there in the back row, smiling like a man who just learned a secret, and decided to keep it. I sat in my pickup long after the engine ticked itself quiet. The driveway light flickered the way it always does, like it's unsure whether it wants to stay loyal or burn out. The house was glowing warm and steady, same as every night. Same mortgage I paid. Same roof I patched last winter when it leaked over Olivia's bedroom. I didn't go inside right away. I stared at my reflection in the windshield and tried to match it to the word loser. Solid build, calloused hands, a man who hasn't missed a payment in his life. If that's losing, I've been doing it consistently. 10 years. I ran the math because numbers are easier than feelings. 10 years of football cleats that cost more than my first car payment. 10 years of orthodontist bills where the receptionist would say, "You're such a good dad," and I'd nod without correcting her. 10 years of parent-teacher conferences where teachers assumed I was biological because I showed up every time. I bought Tyler his first suit for a middle school dance. He complained about the tie. I tied it anyway. I built Olivia a study desk from scrap wood because she said the one in the store was too basic. I fixed the brakes on her car the week she got her permit. I taught them both how to check oil, how to shake hands, how to look a man in the eye. Apparently, I forgot to teach gratitude. The house lights shut off one by one. I watched the living room go dark, then the hallway, then the kitchen. When I finally stepped out of the truck, the night air felt sharp, clean, honest. Inside, the hallway was lined with framed school pictures. First-grade gap-toothed smiles, soccer trophies, dance recital programs. Every single frame paid for by the loser who just paid the bills. I walked past them slowly. In the kitchen, I heard Marissa's voice, low but not low enough. "He's being dramatic," she said into her phone. A pause. They were just speaking from the heart. From the heart. I stood there for a second, not hidden, not announced. Just listening. "They didn't mean it like that," she continued. "He takes everything so personally." Personally. I stepped into the room and she stiffened when she saw me. She ended the call too fast. That guilty, clipped, "I'll call you back." "You okay?" she asked, like I'd scraped my knee. "Fine," I said. And I meant it, because something inside me had shifted from heat to ice. The humiliation from the gym wasn't burning anymore. It was crystallizing. Clean edges, sharp corners. I went down the hall to my home office. Not the fancy kind, just a converted spare bedroom with a metal filing cabinet and a desk I bought used from a closing insurance agency. Bottom drawer, small brass key. Inside was the symbol of the last 5 years of my life. A college fund statement, printed quarterly, neatly stacked. I took the most recent one out and laid it on the desk. 5 years of overtime shifts. Saturdays spent working instead of fishing. No vacations. No new truck, even though mine's older than Tyler's sarcasm. Every extra dollar shaved from bonuses, side jobs, tax returns. Redirected, compounded, protected. The total sat there, solid and unemotional. I ran my thumb along the edge of the paper. They thought I just paid the bills. They didn't know about the separate account I opened when Tyler turned 13. They didn't know I moved money in small increments so it wouldn't strain the monthly budget. They didn't know I refinanced at a lower rate and funneled the difference straight into that fund. Marissa never asked for details. She trusted the outcome, not the process. I remembered her words from years ago when Tyler first rolled his eyes at me. "They'll appreciate you someday." I believed her. That belief cost me 5 years. I pulled open the drawer further and took out a small silver coin I'd kept since my own father died. It's nothing special, just an old $50 he carried for luck. He used to tell me, "If you're going to build something, make sure it belongs to you." I set the coin on top of the statement. This fund belonged to me. Not legally shared, not emotionally owed. My name. My hours, my sacrifice. I didn't feel rage. Rage is loud and sloppy. What I felt was clarity, a quiet recalculation. Upstairs, I heard Tyler laugh. Olivia's voice followed, light, carefree. Marissa moved around the kitchen like everything was normal. Maybe for them, it was. For me, something had ended in that gym. Not love, not immediately, but illusion. I folded the statement carefully and slid it back into the drawer. The brass key turned with a soft click. I pocketed it instead of returning it to its usual spot. That was the only visible change in the house. No shouting, no accusations, no dramatic confrontation about respect. If they thought I was dramatic, I'd give them the opposite. I turned off the office light and walked down the hallway again. Those framed pictures looked different now. Less like memories, more like invoices. In the kitchen doorway, Marissa watched me. "We'll talk about today later," she said gently. I nodded. "Sure," I replied. But in my head, the conversation was already over. They wanted to redefine me publicly. Fine. Tomorrow morning, I'd redefine myself privately. And this time, The numbers would move in my direction. I woke up before the alarm. No anger, no shaking hands, just a steady pulse and a clear objective. The house was quiet. Tyler's door closed. Olivia's music faint through the wall. Marissa breathing slow beside me, like nothing had shifted in the universe. I slid out of bed and walked to my office. The brass key felt heavier in my pocket than it had the night before. I unlocked the drawer, pulled out the latest statement, and set it beside the computer. The old half-dollar coin sat where I'd left it. I picked it up, rolled it between my fingers once, then set it down again. If you're going to build something, make sure it belongs to you. I logged in. Two-factor authentication. Security question. Mother's maiden name. All the layers I'd built to protect their future. Funny how protection works both ways. The balance loaded. 5 years of discipline glowed back at me in clean, black numbers. Not flashy, not dramatic, just proof of consistency. I stared at it for a full minute, not to hesitate, but to remember. Late shifts, canceled trips, the promotion I declined because it required relocation and the kids need stability. Every small sacrifice condensed into a single figure. Then I clicked transfer. Every dollar, from the college fund account into a holding account under my sole name. No joint access, no secondary user, no shared alerts. The screen asked me to confirm. I did. Processing. Completed. No thunder, no flashing red warnings, just numbers moving from one column to another. Quiet, efficient, clean. I printed the confirmation and placed it in a new folder, not the old one. A fresh manila folder that didn't carry 10 years of assumption inside it. By noon, I was sitting across from my financial advisor, a man who wears cufflinks like their armor. He looked at the paperwork and raised one eyebrow. "Change of plans?" he asked. "Change of beneficiaries," I replied. He didn't ask for the story. Professionals don't. They just adjust structures. We discussed tax implications, liquidity, short-term holding strategies, everything legal. Everything documented. No emotional fingerprints on any of it. By the time I left his office, the money had a new trajectory. At home, brunch was loud. Tyler was at the kitchen island, phone out, grinning. "It's blowing up," he said. "Like, people are actually sharing it." Olivia leaned over his shoulder. Mike commented, "He said he's proud of us." Marissa glanced at me as I poured coffee. "Can you believe how confident they were?" she said, smiling like it had been a charming moment instead of a surgical one. I took a sip. "Yeah," I said, "confident." Tyler finally looked at me. "Hey, about the tuition deposit. It's due next week, right?" "I'll handle it," I said. He nodded, satisfied. The provider had spoken. System stable. That phrase, "I'll handle it," used to feel like purpose. Today, it felt like leverage. Later that week, I drove across town to a smaller house than ours. Faded siding, neat yard. The kind of place that doesn't hide its struggle, but keeps it tidy anyway. Hannah answered the door, Marissa's distant cousin. 20 years old, always polite. The kind of quiet that isn't weakness, just restraint. She invited me in, nervous but respectful. We sat at her kitchen table. She showed me her acceptance letter to a state university nursing program. The paper was creased from being unfolded too many times. Pride does that. "I'm still figuring out financial aid," she said. "I'll make it work. I always do." No entitlement. No expectation that I owed her anything. Her mother brought coffee in mismatched mugs. I noticed the old refrigerator humming in the corner and the stack of medical bills on the counter, neatly clipped together. Her father had passed 2 years ago. Heart attack. No life insurance. Hannah talked about wanting to work in trauma care. "People show up on their worst day," she said. "I want to be the person who knows what to do." She never once asked for help. That mattered. I asked a few practical questions. Tuition cost, housing, books. She answered with exact numbers, like she'd rehearsed them in case someone ever bothered to ask. When I left, I didn't make a grand promise. I didn't need to. The plan had already shifted in my head the morning I clicked confirm. The legacy I built wasn't about blood. It wasn't even about love anymore. It was about value. And value belongs where it's recognized. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. Tyler again. "Hey, just checking. You've got the deposit covered, right? Don't want to miss housing." "I said I'll handle it," I replied. There was a pause on his end. Maybe he heard something different in my tone. Maybe not. At a red light, I opened the new folder on the passenger seat. Transfer confirmation. Advisor notes. Clean paper trail. 10 years in the shadows taught me something useful. If they thought I was just the man who paid the bills, then they were about to find out what happens when that man stopped. The first email came on a Tuesday afternoon. Tyler was at the kitchen counter when his phone buzzed. He squinted at the screen, shrugged, and said, "That's weird." "What?" Olivia asked without looking up. "Some automated thing. Says tuition deposit overdue." He laughed like the system had made a typo. "Probably a glitch," he said. "Daniel probably fat-fingered something." I was at the sink rinsing a coffee mug. I didn't turn around. Olivia smirked. "Yeah, he's not exactly tech-savvy." I dried the mug slowly and placed it in the rack. "It's been taken care of," I said evenly. That was enough for them, for now. 2 days later, another notification. This one less polite. Housing assignment pending. Payment required to secure dorm placement. Olivia's confidence dipped first. "That's not good." Tyler rolled his eyes. "Relax. He said he handled it." Marissa approached me that evening at dinner. Her voice was soft, careful. "Can you double-check the transfer?" she asked, "just to be safe." I cut into my steak, chewed, swallowed. "It's been taken care of," I repeated. She watched my face longer than usual, looking for irritation, guilt, anything. She found nothing. That's when the cracks began. By the end of the week, the tone of the emails changed. Less friendly, more procedural. Words like deadline, risk of deferment, failure to remit. Tyler tried calling the financial aid office from the living room. I could hear the forced politeness in his voice. "Yes, sir. No, sir. That's strange. It should have been paid." He hung up slower than he picked up. "They don't see anything on their end," he said. Olivia's jaw tightened. "That doesn't make sense." "No," I agreed calmly. "It doesn't." Marissa stepped into the hallway with her phone and closed the door behind her. Not fully, just enough to muffle her tone. "I thought you said you were covering it," she snapped. A pause. "Well, they're saying it's not paid." Longer pause. "Mike, this isn't funny." So that was the story. Mike had made promises. The same Mike who stood front row soaking up applause like he'd financed it. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the house shift under pressure. Tyler started pacing. Olivia began refreshing her email every few minutes. The laughter from graduation week evaporated. Later that night, Marissa found me in the office. She closed the door gently and leaned against it like she needed support. "Okay," she said slowly. "What's going on?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "The deposit, the housing. Mike says he thought you were covering it. You said you handled it." "I did," I replied. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Daniel." I met her gaze without raising my voice. "You all made it very clear what my role was," I said. "I paid the bills." She swallowed. "That was a joke," she said. "They didn't mean—" "They laughed," I interrupted quietly. "Other people laughed." Silence filled the space between us. She changed tactics. The next afternoon, she invited me out for coffee. Neutral ground, public setting. She wore the sweater I bought her 3 Christmases ago. "I've been thinking about when we first got together," she began, stirring her drink. "You stepped in when nobody else would." I waited. "You've always been their real support," she said carefully. Support. I watched her hands, the slight tremor, the way she avoided saying father. "Support requires respect," I said. That was the first moment I saw it. Fear. Not panic. Not yet. Just the realization that the foundation she'd been standing on wasn't concrete. It was conditional. Back home, the twins were quieter. Tyler texted Mike more often. Fewer replies came back. Olivia tried to sound optimistic, but her voice had a thin edge to it. Another email arrived. Enrollment status, pending cancellation. Tyler's confidence cracked visibly. "This is messed up," he muttered. "We did everything right." Did everything right. I almost laughed. Marissa confronted Mike again, this time louder. "You said you'd help," she shouted into the phone. Through the hallway, I heard fragments. "I can't just pull that kind of money out of nowhere. It's not that simple. I thought Daniel had it." Of course he did. That was the myth. Daniel always had it. Dinner that night was stiff. Forks against plates. No small talk. Tyler finally looked at me directly. "You said you handled it." "I did," I replied. "How?" he asked. I held his gaze. "In a way that aligns with my role." He didn't understand yet, but he felt something shifting. Olivia's eyes moved between us like she was watching a game she didn't know the rules to. Marissa stood up abruptly. "What does that mean?" she demanded. I wiped my mouth with a napkin. "It means," I said calmly, "that when you redefine someone publicly, you shouldn't be surprised when they redefine their responsibilities privately." The room went still. No shouting, no theatrics, just a sentence landing exactly where it was meant to. That's when suspicion turned into something heavier. Not confusion, not misunderstanding. Fear that the safety net they'd mocked might not be there anymore. And for the first time since graduation, none of them were laughing. Orientation week hit like a reality check with a clipboard. Tyler called first. "They're saying enrollment gets deferred if the deposit isn't in by Friday," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Like, actually deferred. Olivia got on the phone after him, and she wasn't steady at all. "Mom, they're not joking," she said. "They're serious." Marissa drove them to campus herself. I didn't offer. I had a full day scheduled. By noon, I got the second call. Tyler again. No swagger this time. "They told us straight up," he said. "No payment, no dorm. No dorm, no start date." I leaned back in my office chair and looked at the framed certificate on my wall. 25 years at the same company. Reliability has a way of becoming invisible until it's gone. "I understand," I said. "Can you just call them?" he snapped. "Fix it?" "I already handled it," I replied. Silence. Then the line went dead. At 3 in the afternoon, Marissa walked into my workplace like she owned it. Reception tried to stop her. She brushed past. She didn't scream. That would have been easier. "What did you do?" she demanded, standing in my office doorway. I closed the file I'd been reviewing and reached into my desk drawer. Not the home drawer. This one. I slid a printed confirmation across the desk. Date: the morning after graduation. Transfer: full balance withdrawn. She stared at it. "You moved it," she whispered. "Yes." "Why?" I folded my hands on the desk. "You said I was just the man who paid the bills," I said evenly. "So I stopped paying." Her face drained. "You can't punish them like this," she said. "Punish?" I tilted my head slightly. I adjusted my role. Her eyes darted around the office like someone might rescue her from the logic. "They're kids," she said. "They're adults," I corrected. "They made a public statement." She tried another angle. "You're humiliating us." I held her gaze. "No," I said calmly. "They did that on their own." Word traveled fast. By the weekend, we were at her sister's house for a pre-planned family barbecue. The same relatives who'd clapped at graduation were there, balancing paper plates and gossip. The tension was thick before anyone even said anything. Marissa didn't wait long. "He took their college money," she announced to the group like I'd committed a crime. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Her brother-in-law frowned. "What do you mean?" "He emptied the account," she said, voice shaking now. "After everything." I stepped forward, not loud, not aggressive, just present. "I transferred funds from an account in my name," I clarified. "For their education," she snapped. I looked around at the circle forming. "What exactly did I betray?" I asked quietly. No one answered. Tyler stepped in then, desperate. "We didn't mean it like that," he said. "The speech was just hype. You know how it is." I finally looked him straight in the eyes. "You meant every word," I said. He flinched. Not dramatically, just enough. Olivia crossed her arms, defensive. "It was a joke." "A joke people laughed at," I replied. One of the older relatives cleared his throat. "Well, maybe it went too far." Marissa's voice cracked. "They were celebrating their father." I nodded slowly. "They did," I said, "and I respect that." Confusion flickered across a few faces. "I just accepted the definition they gave me," I continued. "If I'm only the guy who pays the bills, then my responsibility ends there." The barbecue grill smoked in the background. Nobody touched their food. Tyler's confidence was gone now. "So what? You're just done with us?" "No," I said. "I'm done being misnamed." Marissa stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're destroying their future." I shook my head slightly. "No," I said again. "I'm redirecting my investment." That word landed harder than I expected. Investment. because that's what it had been. Time, money, stability, all poured into something I believed would grow into respect. Instead, it grew into entitlement. People began shifting uncomfortably. The stable provider image they'd always attached to me started cracking. Not because I was yelling, because I wasn't. I wasn't defensive. I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't negotiating. Tyler tried one last time. "Just put it back," he said. We'll apologize." I studied him for a long second. "You already told me who I am," I said calmly. "I'm just acting accordingly." No one clapped this time. No one laughed. And for the first time since that stage in the gym, they weren't looking at me like a background character. They were looking at me like the decision maker. The man who pays the bills had stopped paying. And suddenly, that title didn't sound like an insult anymore. Monday morning, I sat in a small bank office with beige walls and a desk that had seen better decades. Across from us, the banker typed carefully, confirming routing numbers, double-checking spelling, making sure everything aligned. Hannah sat beside me, hands folded tight in her lap. She wore a simple blouse and the same nervous determination she'd had at her kitchen table. "This covers the full first year," the banker said. "Tuition and housing." He turned the monitor slightly so she could see the confirmation screen. "Paid in full." Hannah blinked twice, like her eyes needed to recalibrate. "Why me?" she asked quietly. I didn't hesitate. "Because gratitude still exists," I said. Her throat tightened. She didn't cry loudly, just one steady breath and a nod. Respectful, controlled. No entitlement, no performance. When the receipt printed, she held it like it was fragile, like it meant something. It did. On the way out, she thanked me 3 separate times. Not the exaggerated kind. The kind that comes from someone who understands cost. That afternoon, her mother made a social media post. No names. Just a picture of Hannah holding her acceptance letter, and a caption about an unexpected blessing from a man who stepped up when he didn't have to. The internet does what it does. Family members connected dots. Mutual friends shared it. By dinner, my phone had 3 missed calls and 2 messages from Marissa. I didn't answer. Around 8 that evening, there was a knock on my apartment door. I had moved out quietly after the barbecue. No drama, just paperwork and a lease signed without commentary. When I opened the door, Marissa stood there. Eyes red, makeup smudged. Pride cracked down the center. Behind her, Tyler and Olivia stood a few steps back. No gowns now, no microphones. Just 2 adults who had discovered gravity. "You give it to her," Marissa said, voice trembling. "Yes." "How could you?" she whispered. I leaned against the doorframe. "Calm," she whispered. "You said I was just the man who paid the bills," I reminded her. "I chose where to pay them." Tyler stepped forward. "We messed up," he said quickly. "Okay? We messed up." Olivia nodded, arms wrapped around herself. "We didn't think you'd do this." There it was. They didn't think. Marissa's voice broke. "Please," she said. "They made a mistake. We all did." I looked at her carefully, not with anger, not even with bitterness, just clarity. For 10 years, I said, I built something for you. I showed up. I sacrificed. I stayed consistent. She closed her eyes. You let them redefine me publicly, I continued. You didn't correct it. You didn't stand up. Her lips parted, but no defense came out. Tyler tried again. We'll apologize. Publicly. We'll fix it. You already showed the public who I was, I said calmly. I believed you. Silence filled the hallway. Neighbors' doors cracked open slightly. Curiosity travels fast in apartment buildings. Marissa took a step closer. Just put it back, she begged. We can still make this right. I shook my head once. No, I said. Olivia's voice cracked. You're ruining our future. I held her gaze. No, I replied. I redirected it. That word again. Redirected. Because the truth is, the money didn't vanish. It didn't burn. It didn't rot. It went to someone who understood what it cost. Marissa's shoulders sagged. We were a family, she said weakly. We were, I agreed. And that was the difference. Were. I stepped back slightly, keeping my tone even. You don't get to publicly demote someone and privately expect them to keep funding your lifestyle. Tyler swallowed hard. We didn't know it would go this far. It didn't, I said quietly. It went exactly as far as your words. No shouting, no raised hands, just arithmetic. 10 years of being a foundation. One sentence to erase it. One transfer to respond. Marissa's voice dropped to almost nothing. Please. I studied them for one last moment. The twins who once ran to me with scraped knees. The woman who promised they'd appreciate me someday. Maybe they will. Just not on my payroll. I stepped inside and closed the door gently. No slam, no spectacle. Inside, the apartment was quiet, clean, mine. I sat down at the small kitchen table and placed the old $50 coin in front of me. If you're going to build something, make sure it belongs to you. For 10 years, I built a future for people who mistook stability for weakness. Now that future belonged somewhere else. The silence in the room wasn't lonely. It was final. And for the first time in a decade, I wasn't paying for anyone's applause. You see what happened? He didn't explode. He didn't plead for respect. He simply changed the money's direction. And suddenly, everyone remembered his value. That's the lesson most people dodge. Respect isn't restored with speeches. It's restored with consequences. If someone's comfortable calling you just the wallet, don't act surprised when the wallet closes. And notice, he didn't burn the kid's future. He rerouted it. That's not rage. That's controlled accounting. If that made you uncomfortable, good. Because the quietest move is often the one that finally tells the truth.